Okay, I'm going to start this morning by just welcoming all of you guys. Sawadee kap, ni hao. Welcome to all of you guys that are joining us here at the temple and everyone who's joining us online as well. Welcome to everyone. Today is our Pali Canon and English study group, and we study the words of the Buddha in this course or this program where each Saturday we come together and we study the original words of the Buddha. We start with meditation, but then we move into studying the original words of the Buddha. So I'll explain to you guys how we do that after we meditate. So if you'd like to join in meditation, what I do is I start with chanting in order to ease the mind into meditation. If you guys would like to do some chanting, I have the chants that I do on a laminated sheet over there on the table. You can get that laminated sheet and then you'll see the words that I use in the Pali language in order to chant. You also see the English translations as well. These chants, they're not any kind of ritual or rite or worship or ceremony or anything like that. It's not prayer. There's nothing mystical or magical about chanting. During the lifetime of the Buddha, he used chanting as a way to commit the teachings to memory. So students would come together every 2 weeks and they would recite his teachings word for word for word. So this is how chanting got started. But sometimes in some environments you go to, people think that chanting is having this mystical or magical effect, or somehow you're praying to the Buddha or praying to somebody. But this isn't actually true. The Buddha never taught that. So when I'm doing chanting, it's helping to develop the mind, to develop awareness of mind, concentration and focus, able to help you ease into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. So if you'd like to chant along, you're welcome to. You'll notice that there's a lot of respect and gratitude and admiration for the Buddha in these chants. I suspect his students probably created these during his life or after his death, because a Buddha doesn't walk around teaching his students to chant things to him, because he would have eliminated his ego and his arrogance. He wouldn't have taught something like this. So these were probably created either during his life or after his death by his students, because one of the things that the Buddha was doing, the main thing that he was doing, was helping people get to enlightenment. And getting to enlightenment is to eliminate all your anger and sadness and frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All these discontent feelings are eliminated from the mind through training the mind. So if you learn from a teacher how to move from those types of feelings to the enlightened mental state where the mind's completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy permanently, you'd probably have a lot of respect and gratitude for that teacher too. So people had a lot of respect and gratitude for him because he didn't want anything from his students and he didn't expect anything from his students. He just helped them to be able to move from this unenlightened state where the mind's having this sorrow and grief and pain and displeasure to this peaceful and joyful mental state that is the enlightened mind. So if you'd like to chant along, you're welcome to. I will do those chants as we ease into meditation. Then once we get into meditation, I'll provide you some guidance on meditation itself. Then there'll be a period of time where it'll just be quiet. We'll be meditating together, all of us here and everyone online. I'm sure you're going to hear the occasional sound like a dog or a bird or maybe a car going past or something like this. But these sounds are all impermanent. You could just train your mind to come back to the breath. After we go through the period of time where it's quiet and we're meditating, then we'll come out of the meditation with some chanting, and then that's where we'll start our class. There's 4 positions to be able to meditate in. They're seated, lying, standing, and walking. And typically people will start in the seated position. This is a primary position to learn meditation in and also to do meditation. So you could sit on the floor, you can sit in a chair, you could sit on a sofa, on a bench. Any type of sitting position would be just fine. When you're sitting, most of you guys are sitting on the floor, you usually would like to have your legs lightly crossed. Just really lightly crossed, not real strong, because it would inhibit the circulation and you would experience pain in the lower body, and you're not interested in experiencing pain. So just lightly cross your legs. Some people like to put their legs off the mat so that the mat is lifting up your rear, which lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles, and this will allow the circulation to flow more readily as well. So feel free to make yourself comfortable however you choose to sit. The Buddha will put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. If this is comfortable for you, you could use this, but it's not about everyone doing it exactly the same way. So if you don't find this to be comfortable, you might choose another option, like putting your palms on your thighs or on your knees or your palms up. Some people like to just put their hands in their lap. So whatever is comfortable for you with your lower body and hands and arms, just make yourself comfortable. The upper body should be erect. This keeps the mind attentive and alert during the meditation. With the sternum up and the shoulders back, it will help the mind to be attentive and alert during the meditation. It also helps you with your breathing too, because you can breathe in nice and slow, nice and gradual, in through the nose and out through the nose, and this will help you during your meditation. So again, I'm going to do some chanting to ease us into the meditation, and then I'll come back in with some guidance from there. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Wat Tung Mahakawanhang Apiwateyami Sawakato Mahakawata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakawato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakawa Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusranang Poto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath. Either the sound of the breath coming into the nose, or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. สัมมาสัมพุทโธมะเกวาโหตังมะเกวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมะเกวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสภะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารนังสัมมุโนสกาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภควาติ Okay, if you'd like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, I'd like to welcome all of you guys that are here at the temple. Welcome to everyone online as well. Welcome to all of you guys. Welcome to Wat Tung. For those of you guys that this is your first time here, I'd like to let you know that there's a bathroom in the very back of the room, the very last door on the right. You're welcome to use this at any time. Feel free to get up and come and go and use the restroom as you like. There's even a restroom outside the classroom. If you go outside the classroom, there's signs that'll take you around to the main temple bathroom, and you're welcome to go use that at any time as you like. We even have water and snacks and things like this that's provided over here by our students. There's even some orange juice over here and some different things. Feel free to help yourself to all of this. It's provided by our students, and it's to share with you guys so that you guys can help yourself to be more comfortable. So as I mentioned at the very beginning of class, today is what we call our Pali Canon and English study group. The Pali Canon is the original teachings of the Buddha. It's in 45 volumes of books that are about this big. And these books are what captured the teachings of the Buddha. Since he died, they started writing the teachings down shortly after he died. In those teachings that we learn in the Pali Canon, we don't believe the teachings. We never believe the teachings of the Buddha. There's no belief in his teachings whatsoever. So you're not believing a bunch of things and then hoping something good happens when you die. When you're learning and understanding and practicing the teachings of the Buddha, you're learning them, you're investigating them, you're examining them. Then you're reflecting on those teachings to independently verify whether they're true or they're false. And then you're practicing his teachings by integrating them into your life and starting to transform your mind. What you're doing on the path to enlightenment is you're looking to acquire wisdom so that you can train your mind and uproot the pollutions of the mind. You can uproot the causes and conditions that are in your mind that are producing the anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy, all these feelings and others are completely eliminated from the enlightened mind. And you do that through training of the mind. Oftentimes in the unenlightened state, we think that other people are causing us to be angry. But this isn't actually true. And you can see this through the teachings of the Buddha, where you can examine them, you can reflect on them, and you can practice and see the truth that it's actually your own mind that's causing your anger and your stress and your anxiety and all these other discontent feelings. So as long as you don't understand what's causing these feelings, you wouldn't actually be able to eliminate them. Because getting to enlightenment is to eliminate these discontent feelings. You can get to the point where the mind's always peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. Your mind is focused and concentrated. You have clarity of mind and deep memory. You'll notice that your personal, professional relationships are blossoming and they're at ease. You'll notice that you're not even in a bad mood anymore. This is what the enlightened being would experience, and the mind has been trained to acquire that. So you can't believe your way to enlightenment, and you also can't meditate your way to enlightenment. You need meditation, and this is an important component of your practice, but you wouldn't be able to just meditate your way to the enlightened mental state. So in this particular class, the Pali Canon and English Study Group, not only do we meditate, but we study the original teachings of the Buddha through more of a study group fashion, where other programs and other courses and retreats that I teach, it's more of a traditional style of learning where I'll teach for like 15, 20, 30 minutes and then open up to questions, or teach for another 15, 20, 30 minutes and open up to questions. This is what I do on Sundays and Wednesdays. And then we have various courses and retreats kind of Monday through Friday at different times. You can see on our calendar over here on the bulletin board. You can also see it on our website as well. We have various courses and retreats that you can attend. So this particular program is oftentimes people come into it after they've already developed a foundation in the path to enlightenment through one of our other programs and courses. But if this is the first time that you're here, and I can see a lot of you, this is your first time here, you'll still learn plenty today, and you'll be able to learn a bit about the teachings. But just understand there's other programs and courses and retreats that might be better suited for you as you're just getting started on the path to enlightenment. Because this particular program, it's a 1.5-year program. And what we do is we start with volume 2 of this book series that you see over there, and we go all the way through volume 13, where the foundational programs, they start with volume 1. And this is where you would really like to start. So on Sundays and Wednesdays, or some of our other courses and retreats, you can start at the very beginning and build up a nice foundation and a nice framework. This particular program, being a 1.5 years, we're actually coming to the end of this program. We're actually in volume 13. We're studying chapters 51 through 60, and we may not have time to study all those chapters today, but we'll do as many as we can. This is a program where students are oftentimes reading on their own, they're studying on their own, and then they're coming to class in order to get help and support to be able to understand what it is that they're studying. Because all of these books, what they have is they have the words of the Buddha, which you see right here. These are the words of the Buddha. This is a reference back to the original Pali Canon. So if somebody was interested to see what the Buddha was saying before this or after this, they could easily go back using this reference. And then you've got words from me to be able to help you reflect on this and be able to more deeply integrate it into your life. The words of the Buddha, his teachings are very straightforward. They're very clear. They're very concise, but it's actually helpful to have a teacher and a guide to be able to guide you through, because you might not have studied the totality of the teachings, and some of his teachings are connected to other teachings. So having kind of like a tour guide walk you through the teachings is really helpful. So the way that I do this program is I invite the students here at the temple, and those of you guys that are joining in Zoom, if you would like to volunteer to read one of these chapters, and you can see the chapter in this case is only 1 page. And if you read that chapter, then afterwards, I will share some teachings on that for about 5 minutes or so. And then I will open up to any and all questions that you guys might have related to that particular chapter. If you would like to volunteer to read, or if you have any questions at any time during our class today, we have some microphones here in this white bowl in front of the camera that I would just ask if you could use that microphone, because then we'll be be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you online as well. They wouldn't be able to hear you if you didn't use the microphone. So if you get a microphone, all you need to do is press the gray button on the front, the lights come on, and then you just hold it up to your chin, and then we'll be able to hear you here, and they'll be able to hear you online. And then for those of you guys online, if you have questions, you can put that into the comment section of Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Or in Zoom, you can raise your hand electronically. And if you'd like to read, if you're in Zoom, you can also raise your hand electronically. Just open up your microphone, and then we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you on the live stream. So is there anybody who would like to read this first chapter? Yes. And by the way, if you get one of these microphones, you're welcome to take it back to your seat with you, because you might have a question or a follow-up question, or someone around you might have a question. You can share these microphones. So we got plenty. You can keep them with you if you take it back to your seat.
Recipient and the fruit of giving, first discourse. Then, knowing that the perfectly enlightened one had consented, Sichaka, the Nigantha's son, addressed the Lichavis, hear me Lichavis. The aesthetic Gotama, together with a community of good monks, has been invited by me for tomorrow's meal. You may bring to me whatever you think would be suitable for him. Then, when the night had ended, the Lichavis brought 500 ceremonial dishes of milk rice as gifts of food. Then Sichaka, the Nigantha's son, had good food of various kinds prepared in his own park, and had the time announced to the perfectly enlightened one. It is time, Master Gotama, the meal is ready. Then, it being morning, the perfectly enlightened one dressed, and taking his bowl and outer robe, he went to the community of monks to the park of Sichaka, the Nigantha's son, and sat down on the seat made ready. Then, with his own hands, Sichaka, the Nigantha's son, served and satisfied the community of monks headed by the Buddha with the various kinds of good food. When the perfectly enlightened one had eaten and had put his bowl aside, Sichaka, the Nigantha's son, took a low seat, sat down at one side, and said to the perfectly enlightened one, Master Gotama, may the merit and the great meritorious fruits of this act of giving be for the peacefulness of the givers. Agivisana, whatever comes about from giving to a recipient such as yourself, one who is not free from craving, not free from anger, not free from ignorance, unknowing of true reality, that will be for the givers. And whatever comes from the giving to a recipient such as myself, one who is free from craving, free from anger, free from ignorance, unknowing of true reality, that will be for you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So here, the first part is actually somebody else kind of talking and setting up the situation. What's actually happening here is this individual created this enormous offering of 500 dishes of food. And then they let the Buddha know that, hey, we're going to serve you some food. You can come to our house and we'll serve you food. So the Buddha went and they offered him this food and he ate the food. This is how the Buddha sustained his life. He didn't accept gold or silver. He didn't accept land or animals or servants or women or any kind of things like that. The only thing he accepted as offerings was food, clothing, shelter, and medical care. Those are the only four things that he accepted. Prior to him getting to enlightenment, he was a prince destined to become a king, but he stepped away from that life, those royal riches and the throne, in order to go on this journey to get to enlightenment. And having gotten to enlightenment, he needed to sustain himself in some way. So he set it up so that the students would then practice generosity with him, so that this is actually helping a student to be able to get to enlightenment. That by you practicing generosity and living open-handedly, your mind eliminates selfishness. You eliminate craving, desire, holding on to things very tightly. This is what's causing the mind to be angry and sad and frustrated and all these other discontent feelings. That your mind has these cravings, these desires. You want things to be a certain way. And when you get things your way, you get happy and you get excited. But when you don't get things your way, you get angry and sad and frustrated. This is what's causing the mind to be discontent within your own mind, is that the mind wants things to be a certain way, permanently. And it's just not possible for you to experience that because you live in an impermanent world. So essentially the mind is craving and longing and yearning and thinking something outside of you is going to provide lasting satisfaction. So you might see that your mind chases after things. You might chase after a new boyfriend or a new girlfriend. You might chase after more money, or you might chase after a new house or a new car or something like this. These things can be fine in your life if you have these things or you choose to have these things, but it's when your mind chases after them and thinks that these things, these external things, are going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction that you sabotage your mind. Because as soon as you form your inner feelings based on some condition of something you want, you're setting yourself up for discontentedness, because in some situations you're going to get what you want and you'll be happy, but in other situations you're not going to get what you want. So just think something simply, like sometimes when people look outside and they see it's sunny, they might get all excited and happy because they can go outside and it's sunny outside and you get so happy. But then when you look outside and it's raining, you feel sad, because you can't get what you want all the time because it's not permanently sunny. It's not possible. So this is why you haven't been able to get to permanent happiness, because the mind in the unenlightened state is basing its inner feelings on some condition. Whereas if it's sunny outside, I will be happy. But if it's raining outside, I will be sad. And the mind's doing this with countless things. If my bank account balance is this, I will be happy. But if my bank account balance is this, I will be sad. If my mom and dad do this, I will be happy. But if they do this over here, I will be sad or frustrated, right? Or if my boss does this, I will be happy. And if the boss does this, I will be sad or frustrated. So the mind in the unenlightened state is going up and down and up and down. And it's based on craving, desire, attachment. But there's some other things that are in the mind too, besides just craving, desire, attachment. We refer to these as the three poisons or the three unwholesome roots or the three fires. And the Buddha is referencing those here. When he's getting this offering, he says, okay, whatever comes about from giving to a recipient such as yourself, so by you making an offering and donating an offering, he says, one who is not free from craving, not free from anger, not free from ignorance, meaning that this person is unenlightened. So for an unenlightened person to make an offering to a Buddha, he's saying that will be for the givers. So the benefit is for the recipient. The recipient is receiving benefit from having given this gift. And the benefit is that your mind's being trained to let go of this craving, desire, attachment, because with craving in your mind, you can't let go. When you see something you disagree with, you can't let it go. Your mind's angry and sad or frustrated or agitated. Your mind just can't let it go. Or if some other disagreeable thing happens, maybe you see something, you hear something, you might smell something, you might taste something might come in contact with the body, or some thought goes through your mind just can't let it go because it's not trained to let go. So we use breathing mindfulness meditation to train your mind to let go. That's why when your mind moves off the breath, you let it go, you let it go, you let it go, and you come back to the breath. But your mind has trouble doing that right now because you haven't fully trained. So when we did this meditation, it was probably very challenging for you to let go. And that's why you would do it. You need to exercise the mind. You need to train the mind. You're not bad at meditation. You haven't done anything wrong. You're not a bad person necessarily. It's just that the mind hasn't been trained. It doesn't have the wisdom of how to let go. So the breathing mindfulness meditation is training the mind to let go, but also so is practicing generosity. So that's why the Buddha says the recipient is receiving the benefit of having made, the giver is, the donor is receiving the benefit of having given, because it's training their mind to let go. And then he says, okay, and whatever comes about from giving to a recipient such as myself, meaning him, the Buddha, one who is free from craving, anger, and ignorance, meaning he's enlightened. So any benefit that you receive versus by giving an offering to someone who is enlightened, he's saying that will be for your benefit too, right? Because now you're coming in contact with someone who's enlightened. And if you're giving a gift, not only is it training your mind to eliminate craving, desire, attachment, but it's also helping you to be able to come in contact with someone who's enlightened, and you can gain wisdom to understand how to get to enlightenment. So when you're making an offering to a person who's enlightened, it's for your benefit. It's not for the other person's benefit. Sure, that other person is going to be able to sustain their life from that offering. But the more important thing is that you are receiving the ability to train your mind to let go, and you're receiving the ability to cultivate wisdom. A person who's enlightened, they can go do anything that they would like to do. If they would like to go run a business or have a career or any number of things to make money, they could surely do that as an enlightened being. But someone who's choosing to share the teachings as an enlightened being, they're choosing to do so for the benefit and the welfare of all their students. They have loving kindness and compassion for their students. They're interested in seeing people get to enlightenment and interested in helping those people. So if somebody set themselves up in such a way that they're receiving donations for the work that they're doing in order to share the teachings, this is for the benefit of the students, not for the benefit of the teacher, because the teacher could go do anything that they like. So like the Buddha in his example, he could have went and been the king, right? He was a prince destined to become a king. He could have gotten to enlightenment and went back to the royal palace. He could have totally did that. And then he would have had all those royal riches. He would have been a king. He would have been enlightened, and he could have done that if that's what he chose to do. But instead, he chose to share the teachings because that was what was important to him. It wasn't important to him to have all those royal riches. Sometimes we think that it's money that's going to make us happy. Money is not going to make you happy. When you get money, you'll be happy temporarily, because you're forming your inner feelings based on this money. That when you get a whole bunch of money, you'll be happy for a couple of days or a couple of weeks or maybe a couple of months. If you get a raise at work and your boss says, hey, we're giving you a raise, or hey, we're going to give you a bonus, you'll get happy. But then the happiness will fade away and you'll ultimately be sad or angry or frustrated at some point. It's only a matter of time, because that's what's called conditional happiness. It's temporary. You're forming that feeling of happiness on some condition that you got more money. But when you can get to unconditioned happiness, you can be happy whether you're the king or whether you're a homeless, roaming, ordained practitioner who's walking around the streets accepting donations from people. You can be happy either way. So anytime somebody's making an offering who is unenlightened and they're making an offering to an enlightened being, this is for the benefit of that person, not for the recipient of the donation. The recipient of the donation, being enlightened, could do anything and everything that they would like to do in the world. They don't have to share those teachings with people, but they choose to out of the loving kindness and compassion of their mind and of their heart. Loving kindness is a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well, active goodwill towards all beings. Compassion is the concern for the misfortune of others. So anybody who's sharing the teachings, they have this active goodwill, this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. And they have compassion, which is concern for the misfortune of others. And they're looking to help others to be able to experience this enlightened mental state where your mind can be peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy, no longer experiencing any discontent feelings. So the Buddha is helping you to be able to understand that this offering that you make to him or anybody else, it's for your benefit. It's not for the benefit of the other person. So any questions on this? Remember, those of you guys online, you can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So now we'll move on to the next one. This is chapter 52. Is there someone who would like to read this one? For those of you guys that are here that maybe don't usually use English as your first language, this is a great opportunity to practice your English a little bit. If you'd like to practice, yes.
Recipient and the fruit of giving. Second discourse. Monks, when it is new, cloth made of bark fabric is ugly, uncomfortable, and of little value. When it has been worn, clothes made of bark fabric is ugly, uncomfortable, and of little value. When it is old, clothes made of bark fabric is still ugly, uncomfortable, and of little value. They use old clothes made of bark fabric for cleaning pots, or they discard on a trash heap. So too, monks. If a junior monk is immoral, of unwholesome character, this, I say, counts as his ugliness. Just as cloth made of bark fabric is ugly, So I say this person is similar. For those who associate with him, resort to him, attend on him, and follow his example, this leads to their harm and discontentedness for a long time. This, I say, counts as his uncomfortableness. Just as clothes made of bark fabric is uncomfortable, so I say this person is similar. When he accepts a robe, alms food, lodging, and medicines, and provisions for the sick, this acceptance is not of great fruit and benefit for those who offer such things. This, I say, counts as his being of little value. Just as cloth made of bark fabric is of little value, so I say this person is similar. If a monk of middle standing is immoral, of unwholesome character, this, I say, counts as his ugliness, just as cloth made of bark fabric is ugly. So I say, this person is similar. For those who associate with him, resort to him, attend on him, and follow his example, this leads to their harm and discontentedness for a long time. This, I say, counts as his uncomfortableness, just as cloth made of bark fabric is uncomfortable. So I say, this person is similar. When he accepts a robe, alms food, lodging, and medicines, and provisions for the sick, this acceptance is not of great fruit and benefit for those who offer such things. This, I say, counts as his being of little value, just as cloth made of bark fabric is of little value. So I say, this person is similar. If an elder monk is immoral, of unwholesome character, this, I say, counts as his ugliness, just as cloth made of bark fabric is ugly. So I say, this person is similar. For those who associate with him, resort to him, attend on him, and follow his example, this leads to their harm and discontentedness for a long time. This, I say, counts as his uncomfortableness, just as cloth made of bark fabric is uncomfortable. So I say, this person is similar. When he accepts a robe, alms food, lodging, and medicines, and provisions for the sick, this acceptance is not of great fruit and benefit for those who offer such things. This, I say, counts as his being of little value, just as cloth made of bark fabric is of little value. So I say, this person is similar. If such an elder monk speaks in the midst of a community, the monks say to him, "What gives you, an unwise person, the right to speak? Do you speak to you too are entitled to speak?" He then becomes angry and displeased and utters speech on account of which the community expels him, as if discarding the clothing made of bark fabric on the trash heap.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Good job. Yay. Okay, so this is a very interesting discourse because you might think that anybody who's studying with the Buddha must have just been practicing his teachings so utterly closely. But this would be permanence. It's just not true. That during the lifetime of the Buddha, there were countless people studying with him. And some people were close and they were learning the teachings closely and they were studying and practicing the teachings closely, and others weren't. You know, they were kind of on the outer fringes, so to speak. And they were still shaving their hair, they were still wearing the orange robes, they were still doing all the same things that an average monk would do, but they weren't functioning in a wise way. They were still having this unwholesome conduct that the Buddha is talking about here, this unwholesome, immoral character, right? So he's talking about this junior, this middle, or this elder monk, and that they're of this unwholesome and immoral character. And he's comparing it to this fabric that is made of bark. And he's saying that, hey, this is actually problematic. He's saying just like this clothing of bark is kind of ugly, he's saying, yeah, this is too. When somebody's of immoral character and unwholesome character, this is kind of ugly. And then he says, anybody who associates with that person or attends to him, this is for their harm and discontentedness. Because when you associate with people who are into unwholesome things, your mind's going to tend to lean in that direction. So if you think about the friends and the people you've been around at different times, in situations where you've been around unwholesomeness and people that are in unwholesome things, your mind tended to do those same things too. It would be unwise to judge other people and look down on them, but it's wise to make wise decisions about who to include in your life. So, for example, if you saw somebody doing some unwholesome things like stealing or lying or taking drugs and intoxicants, you might decide that it's unwise for you to associate with them. You're not going to look down on them. You're not going to denigrate them or anything like that or put yourself above them, but you just know that it's unwise to be around people who steal and lie and take substances that cause heedlessness. If you were around those kinds of individuals, you might tend to do those kinds of things too. But at the very least, you're going to be affected by that. Your choice to be around someone who steals and lies and takes substances that cause heedlessness, it's only a matter of time before they steal from you. It's only a matter of time before they lie to you. It's only a matter of time before they're drunk or intoxicated and they spend time around you and you have all kinds of problematic situations going on. So the Buddha is saying for somebody who resorts to someone of unwholesome character, this is for your harm and discontentedness for a long time. And this creates uncomfortableness for the individual who is unwholesome. That's why he says this, I say, counts as his uncomfortableness, because people aren't interested in hanging around somebody who's into unwholesome things. People tend to go away from those types of individuals. So this would cause that individual uncomfortableness because nobody wants to spend time around someone who's unwholesome. Then the next thing he talks about here is he says, okay, somebody who gives an offering to this particular ordained practitioner who is of unwholesome character or is immoral, the Buddha is saying that this is not of great fruit and benefit, because you're supporting those kinds of things. Say you saw an ordained practitioner who was gambling or smoking or taking drugs and intoxicants or hitting animals or things like this. If you were to make offerings to that ordained practitioner, you're supporting that. You're supporting the gambling. You're supporting the cigarettes. So that means you're offering, let's just say financial support would be going to pay for the gambling or going to pay for the cigarettes. So what the Buddha teaches you is when you make offerings to monks or to teachers like me, that you should be sure that this individual is of wholesome character, that you can see that their mind is clear and concentrated and focused. They're interested in sharing the teachings. You can see that they're actually practicing the teachings and sharing the teachings, that you shouldn't see an individual into unwholesome things. If you saw an individual is into unwholesome things, it would be unwise to support that, because that's where your offering's going. Whenever you're supporting a teacher, the teacher is giving back to you the teachings to be able to help you. So if an individual who's a teacher isn't practicing the teachings closely, they wouldn't have the ability to actually teach you, because where the wisdom of a teacher comes from is that they develop their practice. They develop their own practice. And when you develop your own practice of these teachings, then you have the wisdom to be able to share it with other people of how to accomplish the same thing that that teacher accomplished through training of their mind. So the Buddha is encouraging you to be able to support individuals who are virtuous. He talks about this in other discourses. He says that whenever you make an offering to an ordained practitioner or a teacher, that you should support virtuous practitioners. Virtuous meaning of good, wholesome moral conduct, because you would need a certain amount of wisdom and a certain amount of training to be able to have good, wholesome moral conduct. And what he shares for you to pay attention to is pay attention to how an individual speaks and how an individual thinks. Because if an individual hasn't trained their mind will be muddled. It'll be unconcentrated. They'll be stumbling over their words. They'll have difficulties sharing what it is that the Buddha taught, because their mind is polluted, and they'll be muddle-minded is what the Buddha describes. But if somebody's practiced the teachings closely and they've purified their mind and they've eliminated the pollution of their mind, they will speak very clear and very concise and very precise to be able to help you understand the actual teachings that the Buddha shares. So the Buddha encourages you to look at those kinds of qualities of mind so that then you can support the people that are actually practicing the teachings very closely. And then ultimately he gets down here after he goes through all these three different types of people, and he says, okay, whenever a person speaks who is an unwise person. So anybody who has immoral character or unwholesome character, the Buddha considers to be unwise, because this person hasn't cultivated the wisdom of how to train their own mind. They're making unwise decisions about their moral character. So the Buddha considers this person to be unwise. So this person who's unwise and of immoral character, he says, when this person speaks among the community thinks, what gives you the right to speak? And what gives you the right to teach us anything? Because you're of immoral character, you're unwholesome. And when this occurs, he says that those people let that person know, why do you think you're entitled to speak? Because you're of immoral and unwholesome character. And when this happens, the person becomes angry and displeased, because when you're unenlightened, you're going to get angry and displeased. But if you're enlightened, you wouldn't get angry, you wouldn't get displeased, right? But because this person is unenlightened, they're having this immoral character, they're having this unwholesome character, so they're going to get angry when somebody says something like this. And then the Buddha says, okay, what's going to end up happening is that the community is going to expel this person, meaning they're unwise, they're of immoral character, they stand up with ego, thinking that they should be able to teach other people. And he says the community is not going to be interested in paying attention to that individual. They're going to set this person aside. And the Buddha is not giving you this as a rule or a commandment or telling you what you should or shouldn't do. He's just helping you to see this natural law of karma, of cause and effect, or action and result. And the way that you can understand this is that if you are of immoral character, if you are unwholesome character, people are going to push you aside. This is the way that it's going to happen. Say you went to a brand new company, a brand new business, and you were a brand new employee. And say you showed up at that job and you started doing immoral and unwholesome things. The other workers are going to tend to push you aside. They're not going to be interested in spending time with you. So this is why the Buddha is teaching you this, not as a rule, not as a commandment, but be able to help you see this cause and effect, that it's wise for you to cultivate wholesome moral conduct and have the wisdom of how to do that, so that then when you go into any particular environment, you can be wise, you can practice wholesome moral conduct, and then you can be accepted by many people around you, and you can have harmonious relationships with the people around you. But if you went into an environment like a brand new company, for example, and you were stealing and you were lying and you were taking substances that cause heedlessness, which these are all immoral things that are going to cause you harm and cause other people harm. If you were to show up to a brand new company and start doing these things, it's going to cause you difficulties. So if you didn't understand the wisdom of that, you might actually steal or lie or take substances that cause heedlessness. So the Buddha is not giving you rules or commandments or a bunch of beliefs. He's helping you to be able to see this cause and effect, or this action and result. So with that wisdom, you can make wiser decisions about how you conduct yourself in life, and then you'll experience improved results. But as long as you lack wisdom of this natural law, you won't make wise decisions. You will tend to make unwise decisions, and it's going to produce unwholesome results. You're not experiencing good luck or bad luck. You're not experiencing fate or destiny. You're not experiencing punishments or rewards from some being like God or something like that. What you're experiencing in your life is the results of your decisions. Whenever you experience something wholesome, it's because you've made wise decisions. When you experience something unwholesome, it's because you've made unwise decisions. And if you look at the decisions you're making, compare that to what the Buddha is teaching you, you can come to a wise decision making that is going to produce wholesome results. And you can get to a point where you're just always experiencing wholesome results in your life. You're not experiencing anything unwholesome. So this is what the Buddha is teaching you, is this natural law of karma, or some people call it karma. The word karma is the Sanskrit version of this word. In the Pali language, it's referred to as karma. And this word, I still need to use it from the Pali language. I tend to not use Pali words because teaching in English would be much better for you. You can learn it and understand it right away. Where if I used a bunch of Pali, you would have difficulties learning, because you have to first learn Pali, then you can learn the teachings. So by speaking in English, then you can more readily understand the teachings. So this word karma is this cause and effect, or this action and result. It's the results of your decisions. And every decision you make is going to produce some type of result. It's either going to produce a wholesome result if you make a wise decision, and it's going to produce an unwholesome result if you make an unwise decision. So that's why everything in the teachings of the Buddha is about cultivating wisdom, because the more you understand about this natural law, the wiser decisions you can make, which which will produce more and more wholesome results in your life. And here he's just giving you one little component of that natural law and explaining to you that if you're of immoral and unwholesome character, people aren't going to be interested in spending time with you. And that's what he's helping you to be able to see here. But conversely, if you are of wholesome character, of moral character, people will be interested in spending time with you. And now you can have lots and lots and lots of relationships that will be beneficial for you in the world. So you're going to need to cultivate a certain amount of wisdom to be able to learn how to have moral conduct and wholesome conduct. And this will benefit you in the world. It will help you promote more peacefulness and joy in your day-to-day life as you're making these wise decisions. So any questions on this chapter? You have a question, right, Rex? All right.
Yes, in the past we've learned that true generosity expects nothing in return.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a little surprised here that it seems to imply that you have to be careful with your generosity. In other words, if you give something to someone who's immoral, that generosity doesn't count to you, the giver, as much as if you give it to, for example, an arahat or a Buddha. So I'm a little bit confused when they talk about, in this passage specifically, there's not much value in giving to an immoral novice, an immoral middle-level monk, or an immoral high-level monk.
Mm-hmm.
Because for one thing, you may not know that they're immoral. If you're giving them alms food, you have very little contact with them. You may not know them. In passing, you give them some food.
Mm-hmm.
So it's tough to know if they're moral or righteous, if they're upstanding or of bad character. So I'm surprised here that he almost implies that you have to be careful with your generosity, that there's different results or gamma from depending on who you are generous with. This is contrary to everything I've heard before about true generosity. Has no expectations. It's just giving. If you would comment on that, please.
Okay, so you're not understanding right now. So what you're describing is what you currently think and what you're currently understanding. And what the Buddha is guiding you towards is the way to function as an enlightened being. So as an enlightened being, you're not just going to haphazardly give a gift to an ordained practitioner without knowing them, right? So what you're describing is what you currently see and what you're currently doing, but he's guiding you in how to move to this higher consciousness. We're moving to a higher consciousness as an enlightened being. You're going to think through your decisions. You're not going to just haphazardly start practicing generosity all over the place. You're going to think through any particular decision, not with an expectation, but with wise decision making. Everything that the Buddha taught comes back to discernment, where you think through a certain decision. So if you're going to make a decision to make an offering to an ordained practitioner, for example, it would be wise to know this person and get to know the person, that you don't just haphazardly make an offering, but you get to know this person, you build a relationship with this person, you understand this person, and then through that relationship, that's where you're now making offerings. Because the thing that's coming back to you that you don't expect, but that is coming back to you by a way of your offerings, is teachings. Going out on the street and just haphazardly giving food to any monk that walks down the street, in my opinion, is not always wise, because what you would like to do is build up a relationship with a particular ordained practitioner, a particular teacher, and now through regular offerings to that person, you're coming in contact with that person to be able to receive the teachings. What you see a lot of times, even here in Thailand, is people will make offerings to an ordained practitioner in the street. The ordained practitioner will say some words which they think is blessing you, which isn't actually what the Buddha taught. Instead, if you were making an offering to the Buddha during the lifetime that he existed, You were having a relationship with him, meaning he was in your village for a week or a month or 3 months, and he was in that same village, and you were coming in contact with him regularly, and you were a student of his. And now, having studied with him to a certain degree, you understand his wholesome character. And now, as a result of you making this offering, it's helping you with your generosity and training your mind to eliminate craving. And you're coming in contact with an individual who can help you to learn and practice the teachings. So you shouldn't have an expectation that someone will be wholesome, but instead you should be wise and practice discernment, which is wise decision making, to ensure that when you're making an offering, you're making an offering to someone who is into wholesome things. And this is going to ensure that it has the most benefit. Whereas if you didn't think through your decisions and you just practice generosity with any old monk that's walking down the street, you don't have discernment. You haven't made a wise decision. You haven't thought through your decision. And everything the Buddha is teaching you is to think through your decisions from this higher consciousness and be able to use your wisdom to make wise decisions that are going to produce wholesome results. So what you're describing would be somebody who's not thinking through their decisions. And that might be where you're at now, but the Buddha is inviting you to be able to see the truth, that it would be much wiser for you to practice in this way that he's describing.
So we have to be careful of our generosity.
It's not that you have to be careful, you need to be wise. Wise and careful. Yes, careful, you could think of it that way if you like, but it doesn't mean that you're being hesitant or that you're refraining from practicing generosity. It means that you think through your generosity. When he teaches about practicing generosity, he teaches you to think through your generosity and be sure that you're making wise choices about where you're practicing generosity. Not because you have an expectation, but because you would like your generosity to produce the most benefit in the world. Right? So, for example, if you saw a commercial on TV that says, send us money, we're an orphanage, give us your money, we have all these kids and we would like you to send us money. You're not going to just send your money to that orphanage without thinking it through. You're going to probably call up the orphanage, research them on the internet, maybe look at their financial documents, how many children do they have. You're going to investigate this. Whereas if you just haphazardly threw money across a wire or, into a bank account without having investigated this particular orphanage, you might be ending up getting scammed. And this person is taking your money and going somewhere else. So if you would like to use the word careful about your generosity, sure, you could use that word, but I tend to use the word wise. You would like to be wise and thoughtful about your generosity, because otherwise your money could just be going into an empty pot into somebody's, luxury mansion, when in reality they don't even have an orphanage. Right? So you would like to think through your decisions about every aspect of your life, including generosity.
Yes, I understand that. In the past, you've used an example many times about holding the door open for someone, just as a small, simple act of generosity. Should we pause and think, should I open the door for this person, or is this person worthy? Is this person of noble character? A simple act of generosity. Or you see someone in the street who looks poor, and they say they're hungry. And do you have to ponder each act of generosity, or can you just give freely and willingly, whether it be opening the door?
Your mic went out, but I heard you. Okay, so be sure you understand the difference between generosity and merit. You're confusing those based on what you just asked, okay? Generosity is the act of giving and sharing without any expectation of anything in return, such as your time, effort, energy, and resources. And you need to practice generosity with countless people in the world in order to train your mind to eliminate craving, desire, attachment, and get to enlightenment. You're going to need to practice generosity with everybody and anybody. All the examples you just mentioned about holding the door, about practicing generosity with a homeless person, and all those other things. Calm down. Let me finish, Rex. What you're misunderstanding is this is merit. What he's talking about here is making an offering to an ordained practitioner or to a teacher, someone who's sharing the teachings. What he's sharing is that if you're going to practice the production of merit, which is generosity, but it's a unique type of generosity. He's saying be thoughtful about who you make your offering to. If it's an ordained practitioner, if it's a teacher, be sure they're of wholesome character. Because I'm sure you've seen people who are into what we would refer to as a religious tradition, and they stand up and they say, give me your money, give me your money, give me your money. And then when you give them their money, they go out and buy a private airplane, or they go out and buy a limousine, right? And what the Buddha is teaching you is, hey, have some thought and make some wise decisions before you make an offering to somebody who's sharing the teachings. Think through whether they're of wholesome character or not, because you would like your merit to produce the most benefit. If you're making an offering to an ordained practitioner or to a teacher who's spending it on a limousine or a private airplane, this is not going to produce maximum benefit for you. So don't confuse the difference between generosity and merit. While these things are similar, there's a unique qualities and a unique way to practice each. Generosity, you would like to practice this with everybody and anybody without any expectation of anything in return. The same thing is true with your merit. You would like to practice it without any expectation of anything in return. But in both situations, I've given you examples of with an orphanage, you need to think through that. You need to think through that decision. With ordained practitioners and teachers, you need to think through that decision too. But when it comes to holding the door for somebody at a store, you don't need to check to see if they're of wholesome character, because that's generosity. If you're making an offering to someone who's homeless and struggling on the street, you don't have to check with them about their background and what their wholesome character is, because that's generosity. He's teaching you about merit here. There's a difference. So be sure you understand the difference between generosity and merit. Yes. So the question for those of you guys online was, this is only pertaining to merit. The answer is yes. Whenever you see the Buddha teaching you about making offerings to ordained practitioners or teachers, that's merit. And he's teaching you how to do that. When he's talking about other types of generosity, that's just generosity. Both of these are generosity, but we refer to them differently. There's generosity, which is just any kind of giving and sharing with anybody, which producing merit is generosity. But this particular type of activity where you're giving for the continuation of the teachings of the Buddha to an ordained practitioner or teacher, that's what we call merit. And I'm going to be teaching this tomorrow in our group learning program class. I'm going to be teaching you guys what is merit, because it's based on generosity, but it's a unique type of generosity. So we call it merit. Got it now? You understand? Need a new mic? Okay, I'll go on. Anybody else have a question on this one? All right. So we'll go on to the next chapter, which is chapter 53, I think. Yes, chapter 53. Is there someone who would like to read this one? You'd like to read, Rachel? Yeah.
Factors leading to a great mass of merit. Monks, the female household practitioner Velukantaki Nandamata is preparing an offering possessed of 6 factors for the community of monks headed by Sariputta and Moggallana. And how is an offering possessed of 6 factors? Here, the donor has 3 factors and the recipient has 3 factors. What are the 3 factors of the donor? The donor is joyful before giving. She has a calm, confident mind in the act of giving, and she is joyful after giving. These are the 3 factors of the donor. What are the 3 factors of the recipients? Here, the recipients are free of craving or are practicing the removal of craving. They are free of anger or are practicing the removal of anger. They are free of ignorance, unknowing of true reality, or are practicing to remove ignorance, unknowing of true reality. These are the 3 factors of the recipients. Thus, the donor has 3 factors and the recipients have 3 factors. In such a way, the offering possesses 6 factors. It is not easy to measure the merit of such an offering thus. Just so much is the stream of merit, stream of the wholesome, nutriment of peacefulness, heavenly ripening in peacefulness, conducive to heaven, that leads to what is aspired for, needed, and agreeable, to one's welfare and peacefulness. Rather, it is considered simply as an incalculable, immeasurable, great mass of merit. Monks, just as it is not easy to measure the water in the great ocean thus, there are so many gallons of water, or there are so many hundreds of gallons of water, or there are so many thousands of gallons of water, or there are so many hundreds of thousands of gallons of water, but rather it is considered simply as an incalculable, immeasurable, great mass of water. Prior to giving, one is joyful. While giving, one settles in the mind of trust. After giving, one is joyful. This is success in the act of offering. When they are free of craving and anger, free of ignorance, unknowing of true reality, without taints, fetters, mentally disciplined, living the spiritual life, the field for the offering is complete. Having cleansed oneself and given with one's own hands, the act of charity is very fruitful for oneself and in relation to others. Having performed such a charitable deed with a mind free from selfishness, the wise person, rich in confidence, is reborn in a happy, non-afflictive world.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. So here, the Buddha once again is talking about merit and producing merit, because he's talking about making an offering to ordained practitioners, the community of monks. So whenever you see that, you know that he's talking about merit, because you need to practice generosity in general, but there's also this particular type of generosity that we refer to as merit, that you're accumulating merit. And he's saying, okay, there's these 6 factors that you would like to look for, that when you're practicing the production of merit, there's 3 for the donor and 3 for the recipient. And the 3 factors that he's sharing that it would be wise for you to practice for yourself would be that you're joyful before giving, that you're calm and confident in the act of giving, and that you're joyful after giving. So he's using the pronoun she here because he's talking to a female, but this applies to anybody of any gender, right? So what he's teaching you to do is think through your offering, that you should be wise about what you're going to offer. So you should be joyful before giving, calm and confident while giving, and then joyful after giving. If you weren't joyful after giving, it's probably because you're having remorse. Like, oh, I didn't give enough. I should have gave more. I'm so selfish. Why didn't I give more? Or, oh, I gave too much. Why did I give so much? Now I don't have food for myself. Why did I give so much? So the Buddha is teaching you to be thoughtful about when you're making an offering. And when you're making an offering to a teacher or an ordained practitioner, you would like to be calm and confident. Sometimes people can be very nervous and shaken up when they're making an offering to somebody, but you should be calm. And this is training your mind to be joyful and calm. That's what he's teaching you to do in all parts of your life, not just while you're making an offering, but his teachings lead to this calmness and this confidence and this joy at all times of your life. So even when you're making an offering, he's teaching you to accomplish the same thing. And he's giving you the tools and techniques of how to do that, like meditation and everything else. But then he says the person that you're making the offering to, the recipient, these are the 3 factors that you should look for. The recipient is either free of craving, meaning that longing, yearning, or practicing for the removal of craving, meaning they're actively on the path looking to eliminate craving, desire, attachment. Or they are free of anger, that bitterness, the hostility, the aggression, the irritation, the annoyance. Or they're practicing for the removal of that and they're trying to get rid of it. Or they're free of ignorance or the unknowing of true reality, meaning they're wise, they have wisdom about the teachings, or they're practicing in that direction and they're headed in that direction. So what he's saying is make offerings if you're interested in producing merit to enlightened beings or someone who's on the path to becoming enlightened, because that's where it's going to produce the most fruit and the most benefit. If you're making offerings again to somebody who's gambling or lying or stealing or doing things that are unwise, like smoking cigarettes or things like this, if it's an ordained practitioner or a teacher, how could they be of benefit to their community and share the wisdom that it takes for you to get to enlightenment if they themselves are not practicing the teachings very closely? So here he's talking about it in detail, where he says free of craving, anger, and ignorance, or the removal of craving, anger, and ignorance. But oftentimes he will say virtuous practitioners. This is people of moral conduct. So you can observe that the more wisdom you have about the teachings, the more understanding you have about the mind, you can observe this. And this is why the Buddha teaches you to look at the quality of someone's mind. Again, you're not judging them, you're not looking down on them, you're not trying to do those kinds of things, but you're looking to make wise decisions. In order to get to enlightenment, you're going to need to make wise decisions in all parts of your life, including where you practice to be able to produce merit through practicing generosity. You're going to need to have discernment or wise decision making. And he's guiding you in how to be able to do that. Any questions on this one? Yep, Leo?
Oh, I just have a general question. If I make... I have to think. I think I forgot.
Sure.
I think I missed it. I think about it.
Okay, he would like you to ask your question first. He's still thinking. He hasn't sorted it all out yet. Is it on? Sometimes the batteries are not functioning. I think I'm going to have to switch to regular batteries, because these recyclable ones tend to not be working. She's offering you that mic as well, which we know is working. We're just a small temple. We have very little resources.
Is, if my friend or my relative is a gambler, I don't know whether I should give offering or be generous to them, because if I didn't offering to them, I may feel guilty, because they have relationship with you. If I do offer something to them, like money or time or energy, to help them, that they may not do something beneficial to the community or the society. They may still waste your money into gambling. So I don't know if you face this situation.
Yeah, this is a great question. This connects to what Rex was asking too, is that the way that I practice, that in terms of giving food and water and clothing and things like this that sustain somebody's life, I'm willing to share that with everybody and anybody that I see. But in terms of money, I will reserve that type of offering for somewhere that I know is going to benefit from that thing, from that money. Because in like the situation, if you gave somebody who gambles money, it's going to go in that direction most likely, right? But helping this person to sustain their life through food and water and clothing and shelter, sure, why not? Maybe this person's life can be sustained a little bit, and maybe somewhere along the line they realize that gambling is unwise. Like I've had people here in Chiang Mai that are kind of homeless, they're living on the street, and it's obvious that they use drugs. Oftentimes when they see me walking down the street, they know that I practice the teachings of the Buddha and we practice generosity, and they used to come running up to me and asking me for money. And I knew that it would go to the drugs because I could smell the alcohol, and I could see that they were, their friends were high, and the way that they were functioning, it was very obvious that they were using drugs. So they were asking for money. And I was like, I'm not going to give you money, but if you would like some food, I'll take you over here and we can get some food. And they're like, money, 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 right? And I'm like, well, let's go to the restaurant. How about you get some food? Are you hungry? And they're like, yes, I'm hungry. And I was like, okay, let's go get some food. So I took them to a restaurant, and I've taken them multiple times at different places. And we go into a restaurant or we go into 7-Eleven, and I'm purchasing them food. And the time that I'm purchasing them food, they're asking me, money, 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 money. I want money. I want money. And I said, no, I can't give you money, but I can give you food, right? Because I think that, okay, here's this unfortunate being who's using drugs and alcohol. I used to use drugs and alcohol, not to that level of depth, but I used to use it. So I'm not going to judge this person. I would like to see this person be well. So maybe if I help them extend their life a little bit, maybe they can somewhere along the lines realize that it's unwise to use drugs and alcohol. So I'm willing to practice generosity with those people in that way. I don't have an expectation that they get off of drugs, but I'm just interested in helping them to be able to sustain their life so that maybe someday they might choose on their own to get off drugs and alcohol. But I wouldn't give them any money because I know where that's going to go. So this is where you can make wise decisions, not just about your merit, but make wise decisions about your generosity too. And like I gave the example of the orphanage, you're not interested in just throwing your money out in the street to any old organization. You would like to check and be sure that wherever you're practicing generosity, it's going to have the most impact, because that way you can experience the most benefits in the world with the practice of your generosity, not with an expectation, but just as a discernment and wise decision making. Yeah, you're welcome. Great question. Leo, you have a question?
Yeah, I just thought about if I doing my travel, I want to do going to the nature. I don't have so much ability to give someone or train generosity in giving someone directly something. I think you said in the past that I could do it online. So I just thought for example, if I want to give an organization or a teacher money, I could do it like make a konto where every month my konto gives this organization or whatever €5 or whatever. That would be good generosity, right? But I wouldn't be doing it like. Is it maybe better if I pick out a day in the week where I do it on the computer, tipping the money and sending it, because then it's more personal than if I do it every month or every day or whatever, a few dollars. The konto do is for its own. It's not that.
Yeah. So the Buddha during his lifetime, he taught to give with your own hand, meaning you're consciously doing it yourself. Instead of like, hey, mom, can you give that person some money? That's like putting it off on somebody else, because you would like to live open-handedly. Through the action of giving, it's training your mind to let go. Whereas if you told somebody else to do it, it's not going to have the impact that you need to have. So if you're setting up, say, for example, some organizations, they have like a monthly recurring donation. This is fine because you're consciously setting that up. You're doing it yourself. And then usually it emails you every month and kind of lets you know like, hey, you just made this donation of $5 or what have you, or €5. So you're consciously making the decision to do it each individual day. So you can support some organization by financially, if you like. That's one way of practicing generosity. But since I know you're asking this question because you're about to take this camping trip where you're going to be on your own in the woods and hiking for a long period of time, you can even practice generosity there too, and not necessarily even financially. Yes, there's a financial component to practicing generosity, and this is wise. But remember, it's sharing your time, effort, energy, and resources. So you could be walking down the trail, you could see some trash on the trail that you didn't put there, and you could share your time, your effort, and your energy by picking this up and choosing to take it with you on the trail and throwing it away when you get somewhere on the trail that you can throw it away. This is practicing generosity. So you can practice generosity no matter where you're at. Maybe you stop at a campsite and now you're camping. And as we were talking last night, when you're camping and you go to a campsite, one of the ways that I was taught is to leave this campsite in a better condition than which you found it, right? And this is a very wise thing to do as you're walking down the trail or you're camping, is to leave this campsite in a better condition than you found it. This is practicing generosity too, right? And it's producing benefit for your mind because you're now sharing your time, your effort, your energy, and your resources. And you can do this even when you're out on a trail by yourself. There doesn't necessarily have to be anybody around for you to practice generosity. In fact, that's some of the best generosity, because oftentimes when we practice generosity, the mind might be looking for credit or acknowledgement and wanting somebody to acknowledge your generosity. And that's still a craving. That's still an expectation. So when there's nobody around to see your generosity and you're still generous, that's pure generosity, right? Because you're not doing it without any expectation of anything in return for anybody else. And this is great. This is where sometimes you have people that will donate money anonymously and they aren't interested in people even knowing that they donated this money. Like if you know what a secret Santa is or something like this, sometimes people will donate money to an organization and they won't even, allow that organization to even know their name. They'll do it anonymously because they're not interested in any kind of credit or anything like that. And this is helping you get really close to pure generosity if you do those kinds of things. So being out on the trail, you can still practice generosity.
And should I increase my generosity after a while? Like, for example, I'm already cleaning up my stuff. For example, if I would do it, then I already doing it. So should I somehow?
The level of your generosity is going to depend on your ability, right? Because your resources, your time, your effort, your energy and resources, it's going to be throttling based on different things that are going on in your life. Maybe right now you're not working, you're maybe, a young person, maybe you can only maybe offer a certain amount of financial generosity, but maybe you have more time. And then maybe at other times in your life, you have less time and you have more financial capability. So you've got to throttle your generosity and the amount of your generosity based on what you need, right? If you're going through a certain time, maybe you go back to university and you're studying a lot. Maybe you don't have much time or money, right? Or maybe your parents are sick or unhealthy and maybe you need to devote resources to that. But then at other times, maybe you're having more abundance and this would be wise for you to practice more generosity in those time frames. So you got to find the middle with your generosity where your mind is peaceful and joyful and know that you're living open-handedly, but then that's going to throttle and it's going to change because of impermanence. You're going to need to adjust your level of generosity, and you'll be able to assess that with your mindfulness and your awareness and your discernment, your wise decision-making.
Well, I'm not, if I, for example, have my generosity every day, but then it goes less because of time and so on. So do I steps backward? No, right? But it seems like maybe then I go back from from what I already accomplished.
Mm-hmm. There's ways to practice generosity every single day, and that's what you're going to need to do in order to get to enlightenment, is practice generosity frequently and often. There's ways to do that, like I always give the example of holding the door for somebody when you're going into a store and there's someone coming in behind you and you hold the door for them. This is an easy way to practice generosity. It takes you all of about 3 to 5 seconds, right? And you do that without any expectation of anything in return, not even a thank you. If you're standing there expecting somebody to say thank you to you when you're holding the door, if they don't say thank you, you'll be angry. You'll be frustrated and agitated. So you need to get rid of any expectation of anything in return. So you can hold the door, you can pick up trash, you can even like when I'm walking around and seeing people, I might smile and have conversation with them. Sometimes I see little children out. In Thai society, it's very common when you're talking with the little child, maybe they're 5 years old, 8 years old, they're there with their parents. You give them like 10 baht or 20 baht to buy a little bit of candy or a little cake or something. This is a very common thing in Thai society. And it's teaching the child generosity as well as you're practicing. It's like, wow, that person was generous with me. And then they learn to be generous when they grow up. So there's always ways to practice generosity every day. And I wouldn't focus so much on the amount, meaning like the amount of financial contribution. I would look at the frequency of your generosity, sharing your time, effort, energy, and resources. And there's ways to practice generosity every single day. You'll find, if you're looking, you'll find plenty of opportunities to do that. And this will help your mind to eliminate your discontentedness. Your anger and your sadness will get eliminated more and more because you're training your mind to eliminate craving, desire, attachment. Okay. So let me see what the next chapter is. Oops. Wow. Okay. I think we'll stop with that chapter. I know that we've only gotten to chapter 53. It's kind of common in here. At the temple, we only study like 3 to 5 chapters per class. When I teach online at nighttime, because I teach the same class at 9 p.m. tonight from home, I make sure I do all 10 chapters. So anybody who's online or anybody's here that would like to learn the additional chapters that we didn't study today, there's plenty more there for you to learn. But I think this is a good time to actually end by thanking you guys for joining for our class today. And at the same time, invite you to be able to come back and learn. If you'd like to learn some more, you can learn here at the temple. You can also learn online as you travel around because we live stream our classes. You can join by Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. And if you can't attend live, they're all recorded so you can learn at your own pace. I would suggest you start with volume 1 of the book series. You can actually get this book series for free by downloading it from our website. All the books are there. You can download it. You can take it and go print it if you like. You can get printed versions here by just reimbursing us for the printing cost, or you can order them on Amazon if your country has access to Amazon. Starting with the first book is wise because there you can build your foundation. And we have a program on Sundays and Wednesdays that is more of a traditional style of learning where I'm sharing the teachings with you. We go chapter by chapter each Sunday. So this Sunday, we're on chapter 10. We're pretty much right in the middle of that program. That program's a 7-month program. And sometimes people come here to Chiang Mai and they learn about what we're doing. And then when they go home, they start learning from there as well because we have this live stream capability. So thank you all for joining for today. And if you'd like to come back tomorrow or Wednesday, I'll be teaching on those days as well. And then you can also see our schedule for all the courses and classes and retreats because we have those going on all throughout the month, and there's various opportunities for you to be able to learn either here at the temple or you can learn online. Our website is a real focal point. Like if you go to our website, that's like the hub. You can get access to all the books, all the audiobooks, the videos, the podcasts. You can see the classes, the courses. There's all kinds of resources there for you. And it's all shared openly and freely. There's never a time where you're going to need to be required to pay any particular money. So thank you all for joining, and perhaps we'll see you guys in a future class. Sawadee krap.